There are two, maybe three things I think about when I think about tartan. Myths about Scottish heritage, its ubiquity amongst the snobby set, and punk. And today I'm going to make a little tartan dress specifically designed for larger folks like me, because it's the punk rock thing to do. The first thing that went through my mind when I saw this fabric was, ooh, punk pants, and I snapped up just a little bit more than I needed because you never know when you're going to want a matching vest or something. Then I thought better of the pants thing because as much as I like the thought of them, I know that when I put them on, they're just going to make my lower half look larger than it needs to. And like the lady says, hips don't lie. The Juniper Dress is a happy accident. I was looking for something entirely different, probably pants related, on Instagram, saw the dress, and immediately fell in love. About a week later, Rosary Apparel made one in a video, and it struck me as a little bit funny that a gal whose patterns extend to a 48-inch hip was making a dress designed for a larger physique. I mean, it's a cute dress, whether you're a person of size or vaguely normal shaped, so I understand why she chose it. Apparently, it's a design dupe of the utility dress by a company called Noble. I've never heard of Noble before, but I'd rather make my own than pay a company $267 Canadian. Apparently, Noble's sizing goes to a 57-inch hip and a 55-inch bust. The Juniper Dress, on the other hand, goes to a 68-inch hip and a 70-inch bust. I think the pattern's a better deal. I've gotten fairly proficient at installing zippers, particularly zippers that are meant to be seen. And that ties back into my vaguely punk aesthetic on this piece. I was immediately conflicted about my tartan fabric precisely because from the moment I saw the pattern, the thought of punk pants went quickly out the window to be replaced with a gothic punk dress. The kind I never would have found in stores, let alone in my size, back in the 1980s and 90s. So I'm going to get busy cutting my pieces out, and let's talk a little bit about tartan, plaid, and punk. Well, hello there. I've got everything cut out, which kind of boggles me. There aren't that many pieces, but I wasn't sure I was going to get to this point today, which is having everything already cut out and ready to be assembled. One of the things that I did, and you might have caught it when I was showing the cutting out footage, I've not only cut out the regular pockets, but I've also cut out my huge, enormous pockets. The dress has smallish pockets. I mean, it's got pockets. Great, but it's smallish pockets. And this is apparently a quote-unquote utility dress. So I took out my huge pocket pattern. This dress has a channel that goes around the back and has the elastic, basically at the waistline. If I can't squeak the large pocket's top edge into that elastic area, what I may do is use the old-time method of suspending the huge pocket using ribbons. So using a vaguely historical technique on that. And that way, my utility dress has huge utility pockets. I mean, there's also the chance that I'll have to rip it all out and put the smaller pockets in, but if I've got the option for huge pockets, I might as well take the option for huge pockets. And we'll see how far we get on this. It might be done tonight, might be done tomorrow. We'll see. pockets are pressed, stay stitching's done, and most, if not all, of the serging has been done. We are ready to start sewing. Unfortunately, it's about 10 o'clock at night, and I'm kind of hungry and would like to do something else for a little bit, so I will see you guys tomorrow, probably after my dental appointment. Unfortunately, I'm having some fillings put in, so I'll probably be the strong, silent type while I sew. Anyhow, we'll talk to you later. Up until now, I've used tartan and plaid relatively interchangeably. Or, to be more specific, tartan if I'm talking about real wool or something representing a Scottish clan, plaid for the general pattern itself, no matter the colors. You know, like how you'd describe paisley. Apparently I was wrong. Tartan is what you call the general design on woven fabric. Plaid is a blanket, and the whole clan-specific colors thing is generally a myth. There's a whole romantic notion built up around each clan having their own specific tartan due to local plant-based dyes, and while I suppose if you're from a very remote area where you're unlikely to find a trader of any sort and never go into town, well, that's a possibility. Though even here in Canada, many plants can be found nationwide. For those not in the know, Canada's really big. In a relatively smaller area, I suspect that the hand-dyed woven fabrics of remote clans all looked somewhat similar. And if human nature has taught us anything, craftspersons are a bunch of freaking magpies when it comes to color. So old Granny MacDonald would get mighty bored if all she saw was black, red, and green day in and day out. The earliest tartan fabric found apparently dates to the 3rd or 4th century and looks like it was used just as any other household cloth, to seal a jar. If I recall correctly, the jar contained Roman coins, and I guess it says something that while coins are a treasure, so is the tea towel. From what I've read, the cloth was common enough to not really be remarked upon until the Jacobite Rebellion, at which point a specific tartan became associated with the dispossessed royals. Here's the thing, if you go looking for any kind of history of tartan on the internet, you're going to get commercial websites trying to sell you their brand. So much of what I have to relay is vague and steeped in the mystery of the Scottish Isles and kilts. I'm a fan of a man in a kilt, but still. Apparently tartan was banned in the 1700s due to the Act of Proscription that followed the Battle of Culloden, sorta, but that dealt mostly with specific items, like kilts, which weren't the ancient garb of the prehistoric Scotsman like your old gran or gramps might have told you, but grew out of Highland dress of the 1600s. There's a whole evolution of the Great Wrap and Highland dress that comes from wrapping a length of plaid around your shift to stay warm that just kind of morphed into the Great Kilt and the ladies' arised. Essentially, look at the Act of Proscription as Highlanders being forced to dress like their more English-friendly lowland family and give up all of the things that made them uniquely Scottish. When the act was repealed toward the end of the century, folks were used to their more anglicized wardrobe and just carried on carrying on. If you look at it with an air of practicality and logic, when something starts becoming a symbol of a nation, whether the colors are green and black, or red and white and green, or yellow and black, or red, white and blue, or whatever's in the dye pot last shearing season, you take it away if you want to attempt to remove that identity. Around here it would be like taking away Hudson's Bay blankets, poutine, and toques. I'm sure I'd be Canadian without that warm blanket, tasty food, and warm headwear. Ryan Reynolds seems to do well enough, but life just wouldn't be the same, particularly in winter. It gets cold around here, so in many ways sneaking those things, keeping them within the national consciousness, is a form of resistance. And I'm talking about the kilts and other Highland items there, not the poutine, but I'm pretty sure you'll also lose an arm in Canada if you threaten someone's chips with cheese and gravy. Whether trolling or serious, and we're not taking any chances, we've been dealing with the threat of annexation. And there were a lot of Canadians who were very happy when Canadian Tire, a large Canadian hardware and houseware store that used to print its own currency, not kidding, purchased the Bay back from the American company that had previously bought the brand and was looking to liquidate. I've seen a lot of folks hoping the woolen Bay blanket with its unique colors makes a comeback. The last time I checked, they were super expensive. I seem to recall my grandmother having a wool car coat in the Hudson Bay stripe. much like the evolution of the tartan to plaid to great rep and eventually the modern kilt and various Scots memorabilia. So I guess we probably shouldn't discount those romantic notions. Tartan made a huge resurgence back in the 1820s when George IV became interested in Scotland and went for a royal visit. Apparently the clans were encouraged to turn out in their traditional dress, and the myth of the clan-specific tartan was born. The fact is, wool fabric is a great product. It keeps folks warm. Weaving it keeps idle hands busy, so I'm sure eventually some bright spark down at the cracker factory suggested the brightly colored woven fabrics might make a lot of money, and they were right. Add on the romantic backstory and you've got a bestseller, particularly if you view wearing tartan to be some form of resistance. Totally overlooking the fact that the monarchy is a good part of what spurred the revival, but hey. Queen Victoria was apparently really into it. I have a feeling this is why tartan ribbons are so popular in the old-fashioned Christmas decorating scheme, and Elizabeth II was also quite fond. The two monarchs were apparently avid Caledophiles? Caledoniaphiles? They were avid fans of Scotland and they loved their tartans. So how do you subvert the monarchy? Well, you take the thing that they love and you turn it to your own purposes. Ironically enough, a symbol of the monarchy being tartan. And to be quite frank, you can't wave a stick at a luxury or quiet luxury brand since the 1940s without turning up tartan. Burberry check, anyone? Enter Vivienne Westwood. She and her then partner Malcolm McLaren, at the time clothing shop owners dealing to a, shall we say, young and energetic clientele, nurtured the punk scene, who were coincidentally buying their fashionable wares. For a time, the duo supplied stage wardrobe for the New York Dolls, and McLaren would go on to manage the punk band the Sex Pistols. Their punk cred was pretty solid. Designs built around bondage gear became trendy, at least to a certain demographic, and hence, Stuart tartan bondage pants are somewhat iconic of the era, as well as ripped tartan trousers. The Stuart tartan is the ubiquitous red, green, black, and white tartan that is associated with and apparently exclusive to the English royal family and therefore adopted by every Anglophile across the world. The symbolism then stands, taking that exclusive tartan and turning it to the trappings of an anarchistic subculture railing against the pre-Thatcher post-war consensus status quo. If, of course, we're talking about English punk. North American punk had its own sound and style, but to me, punk is rather plaid. Or to be more accurate, tartan. Thing is, Westwood knew what she was doing. She was apparently a fan of history and understood exactly what she was doing, taking that historic check and subverting it to her own design, ultimately registering her own tartans. And when punk reemerged from its uneasy slumber in the 90s with its close relative grunge, tartan was back in full force, this time in the shape of work shirts, jackets, and a kind of shabby Twin Peaks Pacific Northwest vibe. Personally, with everything happening in the world, particularly in the US, 2025 appears to be a really good year for tartan. Just saying. So I am back from my afternoon wanders, and I don't know what it says about me and my age that I went looking for an urban environment in which to be all punk as all get out, and instead wound up in the grassy area off the parking lot from the local IKEA. That said, we managed to get a few things while we were there. This is what we call batching your tasks. At any rate, I like the dress, love it. I think it's fantastic. It is a little short for me, I think, and that's after I did some adjusting, because it's for a person who's about 5'5". I'm a couple of inches taller than that, so I added in another 1.5 inches of height. I probably could have added another inch, maybe 2. And that's just for my own comfort. I went out with a pair of tights as well as anti-chafing shorts for modesty's sake, and I didn't feel all that comfortable raising my arms above my head if I needed to get something at the IKEA. I went to get something from above and could feel the hem rising up over the bottom of my shorts. Kind of uncomfortable, felt a little embarrassing, but I was glad that I had the shorts there just to be on the safe side. Does the dress look like I thought it would? Yes, mostly. The first place I believe I saw it was mostly on Instagram, and then Rosary Apparel's video. In her case, I expected it to look the way it did on a smaller person, but I had also seen it on larger sized ladies. So I had seen it on somebody my size or slightly larger, so my expectations were tempered. I'd also taken the elastic and made it a little bit shorter than my size was supposed to be, mostly because over the next couple of months, with it being summer and me going out and being outdoors a little bit more, I do expect my weight to drop a little bit. That is usually what happens over summer. It's getting cozy over winter is where I kind of fall off the wagon. So with all that being said, it fits perfectly fine. The side seam is right where it should be, which makes it a little bit funny when I'm looking for the pocket and I have to actually go there instead of a little farther forward, because things are usually a little bit big for me or too tight, in which case I'm looking a little farther back, or I just don't have a pocket at all. Trading out the pockets for my larger pocket, fantastic. Aces. Number 1, would do it again, will probably do it again if I make this in a smaller size. Reason being, I feel that my stuff in my pockets is actually really secure. There's a lot of room. I had my car keys in here, my cell phone, when we were in the store, my fancy gothic punk ring. You know, all of these little things got stuck into my pockets. Absolutely no extra bulges. It hangs perfectly because it's attached to the internal workings. So absolutely wonderful. Would do it again. Definitely recommend if you have the ability to draft yourself a slightly larger pocket and just tuck it in underneath that elastic channel. The pockets in that sense feel a lot more secure than if they were the kind of wimpy normal pockets that just sort of droop inside the skirts. So this way the structure is there. It actually kind of slims things out a little bit. So I like it. It worked out really well. But all that to say, it is a fantastic, fantastic dress. I think that if I was to wear it with jeggings or skinny jeans, it would probably work out just as well, if not better. That is, if I felt like encasing my legs in such things. Me and leg wear, particularly pants, it's always going to be an issue. I am never going to like jeggings or skinny jeans, and that is a hill that I am probably going to die on. And stay tuned, because it's coming up. The pants episode is coming soon. I may have already started. Either way, I'm glad that I made the dress. I'm glad it's in the wardrobe. It is comfortable. It is cute. It is summery, even though it is made out of twill. And I probably will make another one of these at some point in time, maybe in a lighter cotton. Possibly if I find a quilting cotton or something with something fun and pretty on it. I think that would be absolutely awesome. So this one was an absolute win. I will definitely make myself another Juniper dress. For the punk thing, I'm not sure if it hit that mark. Either way, it's still just a really cute little tartan dress, and I have no regrets. Absolutely none whatsoever. So make yourself your own little tartan dress. Go out, resist.